and they came to hear from the candidates today. Heckling and loud disturbances, disruptions, thank you. I got stuck there. Will not be tolerated. If anyone has questions about restrooms or events details, please go to the SSCO table in the back of the tent. Onto the program with a quick note about ranked choice voting. Minneapolis has ranked choice voting elections. You will have the power to rank your first, second, and third choice candidates on the ballot. And at this fall, if your first choice is eliminated in an instant runoff, your second choice will count. If the second choice is eliminated, your third choice will count. In the end, the winning candidate will be the one who has the majority of continuing ballots. As you listen to the candidates tonight, consider not just your first choice, but your second and third. If you have questions about ranked choice voting, please visit the table along the building. We will begin with opening statements. First to speak will be Paul Johnson with the Equity in Motion Party.
Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for taking your time to come out and listen to the wide variety of candidates that we have this evening. My name is Paul Johnson. I'm a Northside resident and business owner, a general revolutionary, advocate, and accomplice to all things justice and equitable. I am tired of the incremental changes that our past leaders have told us and made us to believe that that's our only option. I'm running because I've already been putting equity into motion by helping pass legislation in police accountability and transparency with solving the 911 crisis on mental health calls. Now, they are not more beholden to the police enforcing them to take the mental health calls, but they are actually able to send them directly to the co-responder programs, and that is statewide. I am trying to take that sort of idea, that sort of legislation, that sort of power, and my pain, and turning it into more power for our city. We need to look inside of our hearts and understand that leading with our humanity at this point is our only option. All other options have been exhausted. I'm not a politician, as I said. I'm a handyman. I fix things day to day that a lot of people say can't be fixed or would cost too much. That's my business. I think that's what our city needs. The idea of a man who goes to work every day to fix things that others say they can't be fixed. That's what we need here in Minneapolis. That's what we need here in Minnesota. We are the last state in racial equity. That is abysmal. That is beyond words. I have a hard time even coming up with them when I try to place the importance of that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next candidate to speak would be Mike Whitter, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Whitter, and I am running for mayor. I grew up in the Morris Park neighborhood and attended school at St. Kevin's, then Roosevelt, then Brown Institute. I spent most of my life here in Minneapolis, including living through the days of Murderapolis, which are approaching on us again. Like most of 2020, most of us sat inside. Myself, I'm a Teamster union driver. I deliver wine and spirits. I never had a break. I worked through the pandemic. And part of my route was Lake Street. I had a lot of friends that owned businesses on Lake Street, and I watched them burn with the rest of the city and then the rest of the world. I am not a politician. I'm a regular guy, a blue-collar man that decided he'd seen enough and wanted to try to do something for his community. I left the DFL and the Republican parties behind and joined the Independence Party of Minnesota, which is totally nonpartisan. So I'm able to work with anyone, Republicans, Democrats, the Green Party, you name it. I just want to make our city streets safe again. I want to put our police department back together with a full staff and make them transparent. I want to re-energize our business community, and I want to renew the quality of life here in my city that I love so much. If elected, I plan to serve only 4 years and step away. Please consider me for mayor. Thank you very much for coming tonight and for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Next up, we have Mark Globus.
Hello, Minneapolis. How are you tonight? Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedule to come out here and listen to the candidates tonight. It's so important. My name's Mark Globus. I am the moderate Democrat in the race, and I want you to do 3 things tonight during this debate. Stop, look, listen. Don't let fear drive your next vote for Minneapolis mayor. Look at the logic. Look at what's important to move our city forward. If you talk to people out in the community, my guess is if you talk to 1,000 people, few would tell you that the city of Minneapolis is on the right track, that we're moving in the right direction, that things are good today. And something's wrong with that. And if we in 5 weeks decide to vote and re-elect our current mayor, that is more of what we're going to be getting here in Minneapolis. And that's what concerns me most. That's why I'm out here tonight, so that we can chart a new course for Minneapolis. I'm an attorney and business person. I have a business in downtown Minneapolis. I'm a stakeholder in this city. And I'm really concerned about how the city government has been managing things after COVID and after the murder of George Floyd. We need to get things back on track. It is so important to the vitality of our city. I love this city. Minneapolis is a great city, but it has 2 black eyes right now. We need somebody who's a marketer in chief like myself, a business person who can put together a plan to help market and move this city forward. And that's why I'm out here tonight. I'd really appreciate your first vote, and if not your first, make me your second or third. It's going to be a great debate tonight, and I appreciate you coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Globus. Thank you. Our next candidate to speak is Jerrell Perry. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizations that are hosting tonight's event. Thank you to all the residents for coming out. It shows how much you care and are truly concerned about the condition of our city. I'm moving between 74 and 75 homicides. Public safety is one of the hugest issues right now. We have to move to protect our lives and the lives of our children. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to do that for the babies, like Princess Trinity, Princess Anaya, or young LaDavion, who was shot and is still fighting to get back to his normal reality today. There are things that can and should be done, and the current leadership is making the choice not to do that. We literally have people sleeping on the streets in our city. We have to come together and do something about this. We used to say that we didn't have the money, right? We got $135 million last year, another $135 in the year coming up, and that is in addition to the regular city budget. God has blessed us, God has blessed our city with a very unique opportunity to do so many things that can positively impact the lives of so many people across the city. We just have to do differently than what everybody else is doing right now, and we have to decide that we want to make that difference. We want to be the change that we want to see. We have to come together. Our lives and our livelihoods are depending on this. The lives and livelihoods of our children are depending on what we're doing right now. The very future of this city depends on our vote today all the way through November 2nd. We have to vote to change the direction of this city. And I'm asking you to make Perry for the people your number 1 vote, Paul Johnson your number 2 vote, because no matter what is going on, we have to have somebody in that office that's not connected to a party and that's not moving for business interests, but that's going to truly represent the people and the families of Minneapolis. We all deserve that. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Next up is Clint Conner.
Hello, everybody. My name is Clint Conner, and I'm running for mayor. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you to the organizers for putting this together. This is really well organized. Thank you to Mark Weir here, who's our MC. That's a tough job. He was also a Marine, I learned tonight, and I thank him for his service to our country. So I'm running for mayor because I absolutely love this city. And we should be leading on the global stage in the city. We have the potential to do that. And we need strong, bold leadership to do it, and that's why I'm running. I love technology and efficiency, so I became an engineer. I love great ideas, and I love to debate issues, so I went to law school and became a patent litigator. I love to sweat, so I took up boxing. And I absolutely love the city and its multiculturalism, and that's why I'm running to be your mayor. I'm running because I have a vision, 3 pillars: safe streets, stable, affordable, and livable housing for all of Minneapolis, and a small business boom. We can get all of that done if we come together. With regard to safe streets, it's a 2-pronged approach. Number 1, we need to reset the narrative immediately. We need to hold up the good police officers so we don't lose any more. At the same time, for 17 years, I've been handling investigations in litigation, and in 17 years of high-profile litigation, I've never lost a case. I've won a lot of cases with the deck stacked against us, and I want to bring that mentality into the police department because right now the mayor under our city charter leads that police department, has complete power over commanding it, supervising, rules, orders. I want to use that, if you put me into office, to investigate that police department and actually present you with a story of what's going on there, because we are left in a situation from our current mayor we don't know. And I want to change that right away. Housing, we got to get more ownership in the BIPOC community. 80% of the BIPOC community are renters. That's got to change right away. Small business boom, we got to get the small businesses propped up immediately. Lake Street Corridor, West Broadway, downtown, we're going to get it done. And vote for Clint Conner, your first choice vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate to speak is Nate Honey Badger Atkins.
Yes, the
Yes,
Honey
sir.
Badger. Thank you for including that, and thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you for coming out to listen to what everyone here has to say. Again, my name is Nate Honey Badger Atkins. I'm a resident of Southwest Minneapolis, the Kenny neighborhood. I'm running because I looked at the events of last summer, and I was really disgusted because for a short time, so many people came together and were united on issues like ending qualified immunity, ending no-knock raids and warrants, ending civil asset forfeiture. They were suddenly seeing all the issues that were going on with the police that gave them such ridiculous power and abilities to at times murder innocent people. And then unfortunately, in the weeks and months following the murder of George Floyd, we became divided again. I'm running to do a number of things, almost all related to law enforcement, but I think it all ties back into the larger community. So like Clint here, I have kind of 3 pillars or 3 main issues. 1, end qualified immunity. It's a legal doctrine that must not stand any longer because it is giving police undue power and it is preventing us from holding them accountable. 2, require all police carry professional liability insurance as a condition of employment. When you think about it, plumbers, electricians, contractors, even some journalists have to carry some sort of professional liability insurance as a condition of employment. So should the cops. And I think it's time we need to rethink our drug laws, and I think we need to start by decriminalizing drug use and possession. That doesn't mean that we're just going to let it go and let people do heroin on the streets, but we're going to redirect them into treatment programs that are far more compassionate than throwing them in a cage. I am a libertarian, and for those of you that don't know, libertarians are better conservatives than conservatives, and we're better liberals than liberals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Sheila Nezhad.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheila Nezhad. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a resident of the Central neighborhood. I am running for mayor because I believe that the best solutions come from people leading change on the ground. I am a renter, a queer woman, a union member, and the daughter of an immigrant. So public service is in my blood. Both my parents were public servants. My mom worked in the library for years, and my dad was a school teacher at a state school. So they instilled in me a passion for serving my community from a young age. And I first got involved in movements for social justice when I was working in restaurants and got involved in the Fight for 15. And I saw the impact that policy changes could have on working class people. As a renter, I'm a strong supporter of rent control, and I know that we can make changes that will improve, support, and stabilize our entire community. As a queer woman, I also know what it's like to imagine worlds that don't yet exist. When I came out, being married to someone I loved was not legal, right? The law told me it was wrong, but we organized and we changed that. And that's the moment we're in right now, too. We're gonna have to organize and change our government. We're going to have to figure out new ways of caring for one another so that everyone is safe. And we also get to step into this moment of leadership, not just in the city, but citywide. And I'm running for mayor because I think that we need a champion for everyone in this city. I hope you can support me. My website is sheilaforthepeople.com, and I'm also proud to be one of 2 women sitting up here, and we were actually the very first 2 people to jump in the race back in the winter. So I will turn it over with that.
Thank you. Next is Kate Knuth.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight and being part of this really important conversation, because I think we can all feel Minneapolis is at such a critical moment. And right now, Minneapolis is less safe and more divided because for the last few years, we have had an absence of mayoral leadership who is helping us meet the moment we're in and navigate through it. So I'm Kate Knuth. I'm running for mayor because I've lost faith that our current mayor can help us do that. And I bring the commitment to working across the divide and the conflict that we feel in the city and ask our city to dig deeper for that love of Minneapolis that's underneath that divide and that conflict, that uncertainty, to step forward together with courage. And now that doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything, but I think we can all agree that we love this city and we want to step forward together on the path towards justice and justice towards unity, not from a place of fear, but from a place of courage. And, you know, in Minneapolis right now, we have had both the unacceptable happening with children in our community being killed. We also have the unacceptable happening with police killing people in our city. And the thing is about our path forward, we do not have to choose. We do not have to choose between safety and justice. And the only real path forward in Minneapolis right now is working on justice as a path towards safety for every single person in our community. And I don't think our current mayor can help us do this because he's beholden to the status quo. And the status quo is not the path to a safer, more just Minneapolis. So I'm excited to be in this conversation, hearing from you all across the city, and I ask for your support, Kate Knuth, #1 choice support, and look forward to building the city of Minneapolis that we know is possible and that will take each of us to dig in with courage to build.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate. Do we have AJ Awit?
Yes, I am here. So, thank you.
AJ?
Yep, I'm here.
Excuse me, would you like to step up here so everyone can see you?
Oh, yeah, I could. I thought people, could you guys see me down here or no?
Please.
I feel a little special because I get to stand up. So, sorry for being a little tardy. I got 2 young kids and it just took a little longer than I thought. But that being said, my name is AJ Awed. I am currently an executive director of the Neighborhood Association here in Minneapolis, Cedar Riverside Community Council. I'm a professional mediator. I also went to law school like my friend here, but Mitchell Hammond, I don't know where you went exactly.
North Carolina.
Oh, okay. I'm still Twin City born. I'm just kidding. So why am I running? So I'm gonna be quite honest with you. I am really running to hold white people of the city accountable for transformative change. So what do I mean by that? I mean, the mold of leadership we've had in the city, I think, is a certain standard. I think you know what I'm alluding to. And that standard has always promised and always said they understand. And I'm very much someone that when something is tried once, twice, 3 times, again and again, and it doesn't provide actual results, then we maybe need to do something different. And I'm raising my hand in this special moment because what I see is a civil rights movement for black people, brown people, and communities of color especially, right? And we cannot undermine the need that it needs to be black-owned for there to be black transformative change. And I emphasize that importance. That is not to alienate any other segment of the community at large. It is to say simply that we need to have someone that fundamentally understands what racism and white supremacy feels like from the outside, and when they come into the structures of power and systematic change is required and demanded by the people at large, they will be in a better position to actually demand more and change things from the inside. So that's what I want to tell people. As far as policy platforms, you can probably find them on the website. It is very, very extensive. There's a lot to read there. And I'm excited to answer the questions and hope we elaborate more on my rationales and policy platforms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, candidates, for your opening statements. We're ready for question 1 from the community. These questions are collected and ranked as many people were requested to put in their questions in advance so that we can have a consolidated group of questions. This question 1 is, across the city, historically, underrepresented, I'll say that again, underrepresented communities are dealing with ongoing grief, trauma, and destabilization. Many are looking to city officials for the answers and action in responding to the public health and safety concerns such as COVID-19 and increased gun violence. What is your vision of public safety in Minneapolis, and as mayor, how would you invest resources to bring about that vision? Mike Whitter, you may answer first, please.
I'm just going to start out by saying this. 73 murders, 467 rapes, 1,350 robberies, and 2,245 assaults. That's what's been going on in our city under Frey's leadership this year. I understand that he's been dealt a tough hand with COVID and the murder of George Floyd. But the mayor of Minneapolis needs to have a backbone and needs to be willing to stand up for its citizens and not allow atrocities like what happened to George Floyd and what happened on Lake Street, just to sit and watch it burn. What people in Minneapolis need is a strong leader that is not DFL. What you're looking at right now in the city is your DFL leadership that's been in power in this city for way too long, and it's time for an independent choice. People in this city want to feel safe again. I want to reform and restore the Minneapolis Police Department as soon as I take office. That will be my number 1 duty. I realize that affordable housing is a very important issue too, as well as the environment. But overwhelmingly, what I've heard from citizens all across our city is that they want to feel safe again. And as mayor, Mike Whitter will provide that for you. Winter is coming.
Thank you, Mike.
I had to throw it in once, right?
Mr. Perry? Mr. Perry, would you like to go next, please?
Sure.
And do you need me to reread the question or anything? Let me know.
No, I'm good. Thank you very much, though. I appreciate that. I don't have any fancy practice lines or anything, any catchphrases. This is not something that I've studied when it comes to violence in the community, violence by the police. This is something that I've lived. As the only candidate that is ADOS, the only candidate that is an American descendant of slaves, I have lived this. My family has lived this. Gentrification, racism, apartheid. Apartheid is what it's called. It's not racism. Apartheid is when it is the entire system that is built against a group of people. Education, 4 out of 5 black kids in Minneapolis are below reading level. Housing, we have over 6,000 homeless students in our city, according to city data. Public safety is huge. Everybody wants to be safe. Without safety, we have nothing else in our city. We have to take this seriously. It's deadly serious. I've lost 2 brothers, 2 brother-in-laws, 2 of my closest friends, 1 of my cousins shot and killed in North Minneapolis. This is something that I've lived personally. So I'm not just going to give you lines that I've rehearsed. I'm not going to give you that. I'm going to tell you that we're going to come together and do something about this. Starting with the police, there has to be transparency and accountability. I've been to so many marches over the summer, and people are getting mad at the people marching. People are getting mad instead of holding the mayor and the leadership accountable. Once they make the changes that are needed and necessary, people will not be in the streets. People don't want to be in the streets every day, you guys. Believe me, they don't. We don't. But we feel like there is no other option. With that transparency, accountability, we have to have officers that are not community-oriented, but community-harvested from the community. Create pathways for our students to go into public service, law enforcement, nursing, teaching, all of those different areas. We can do this. Again, we just have to take it seriously and want to make that change, and it's going to take a candidate that has not studied it, but has lived it. We have to vote Perry for the people to serve the people of Minneapolis. Thank you.
Next up, Clint Conner, please.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for all of you for being here. I don't know if I thank the audience, but it's really incredible to look out here and see how many people have come out tonight, which is really a great thing. So this is the question of the day. We know that 48 children have been shot so far this year in our city, and that is unacceptable, and if I am elected, that will never happen again. And I will make that my primary objective as mayor. I am going to stake my entire mayoral term on getting safety back here to Minneapolis. We have to do, again, 2 things simultaneously. We have to hold on to good police. What I'm hearing from the community, being out there, talking to people in North Minneapolis, talking to people here, talking to people everywhere in the city, is people want more police. We need more police because we need to have police having time to develop relationships with the community. I want to establish an unprecedented level of community-based programs with our police. This is beat cops. These are people who are sponsoring programs and interacting with children. These are people who are showing people who live here that police are on our side. At the same time, I'm going to aggressively investigate this police department, as I mentioned, and I'm going to instill a service-based mentality. And what we're talking about, I get it. I get it. I've seen what's been going on. I get that. We need someone to come in and stake their claim to the mayoral position on getting this under control and fixing that police department. How do we fix that police department? It starts from the very beginning. Any interaction with anyone in the community has to start at a service-based mentality. We cannot have escalation. We can't have interactions starting at a certain level. We got to bring everything down. We also have to have mental health care professionals and social workers involved. We need to bring those people in and bucket 911 calls. We have to have 911 people trained to ask the right questions so that if we have a situation where it's a mental health situation with police, we have both going out there. Now you got a witness against the police and data aggregation.
Thank you, Clint. Thank you very much. Next up is Kate Knuth.
Thank you. My vision of public safety starts with one foundational value. Every person in Minneapolis, regardless of race, gender, income, zip code, level of ability, deserves to feel and be safe in our city. And safety, we all know, is much more than police and policing. We talk a lot about policing, it is part of it, but it is more than that. And that is why I support and will champion a holistic approach to public safety. And now what does that mean? I can point you to my website. I have a really clear vision and detailed plan there. But it starts with economic security and making sure everyone has a safe, stable place to come home to and is fully enmeshed in a community that they know and that they are part of. It involves investing in young people in our city in real and significant ways so every kid in our city feels like our city is worth investing in because the city is investing in them. And my vision for public safety, I'm very clear, includes police. And the thing about what we need in our police department is 2 things that we need to really focus on. One, we need to ask police to do less in our community so they can focus on the things we really need them to do. We need them to respond to, investigate, and actually solve violent crime in our city. The solve rate for murders in Minneapolis is well below national average and unacceptable. The second part is we need to rebuild trust. And rebuilding trust is not a PR thing. It's not just being out in the community. It's more than that. It is actual change in how policing is practiced in the city of Minneapolis. So we need transparency about the racial injustices in our policing and transparency and accountability for misconduct, particularly excessive use of force. I think public safety and police is the issue of this campaign, and Minneapolis is hungry for more than talking about whether or not more or less police. Yes, police is part of a holistic public safety vision in my mayoral administration, and it is so much more that we know is what contributes to each of us feeling and being safe in our community.
Thank you, Kate. Next up is AJ Outlet.
So I'm going to start off by just saying that this issue of policing needs to be separated and put in context that's proper. I think last year the uprising was an outcry for dignity, right? I would tell you that whatever public safety steps we take, if we're not considering and making sure that we are inherently putting in and building in dignity and respect for black men. Now let me expand. Everybody is affected by public safety, but the disparities largely weigh on the shoulders of black men. Now, if dignity isn't gonna be given to them at the end of the outcome of whatever model we're taking, then it's probably not gonna be a good outcome. And I think Kate made a good important part to emphasize trust. As a father of two young black men, and how I was raised, I want to change the legacy of not telling my kids or telling my kids to be worried and not run into the cops. Most white faces in this room do not educate their children to be worried about cops. To fundamentally shift that, you need to have a deep conversation and lead it with the Citizens Assembly. So if you go on my website, it's very well articulated, but what we need is black and brown communities leading what this new public safety model will be. So personally, I have been advocating against question 2, and I would recommend and really urge and plead to any real ally out there to vote against it. Because if community of colors are not the ones bringing it on board, and if we're not the ones actually validating this new system, it is going to break down within 4, 5, 10, or 2 decades from now. And trust will not be earned that way. And the leadership that I will provide to really have the conversations that are gonna be really, really difficult is the thing that this city really needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sheila Nezhad?
Nezhad, like treasure.
Nezhad. Thank you. I need correction sometimes.
Of course, my dad is Persian. There's no letter in the English alphabet for the zh sound.
Okay.
Anyway. All right. Hi, everyone. So I want to get to know you all a little bit. How many of you all in the last year made or put up a Black Lives Matter sign? Yeah? All right. So most folks. How many of you all talked to your neighbors or family members about racial justice for the first time? Yes? Or second time, or yes. Okay, hands up again. Talk to your friends, neighbors. Yes, yes, yes. Look at all of you. All right. How many of you all joined a protest last year? Yeah, right? Right? You all were brave in those moments. So public safety is my area of expertise. I have been a community organizer working on public safety for years. I have studied the history of the MPD and history of reforms in my work with MPD 150, and I currently work for a group called Reclaim the Block, and we do advocacy at City Hall that led to the creation of the Office of Violence Prevention and the first mental health responder teams in the city. So I've been doing this work for years before I decided to run for mayor, and I'm going to be doing it for years after. And what's different about me is that My values, my plan is rooted in participatory democracy, right? So part of my plan is to have participatory budgeting, where we put aside $10 million for the community to decide how it's spent. I also fully support question 2. In fact, I helped write it. And under my leadership, there will be fully funded 311 and 911 response with more options to call for help. More mental health responders, more domestic and sexual violence advocates, more restorative and transformative justice when harm happens. So I hope that you can step boldly with me into this moment, because we've been trying reform, we've gotten promises of justice and change, and we need bigger solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for your name.
Oh, no, you don't need to apologize.
Okay. Paul Johnson, please give us your take on that question.
As a resident of North Minneapolis, I listen to the gunfire almost nightly, and there has been no clear plan by our police department to take care of any of it. It is respond, respond, respond. When you are only responding, you are only showing up to wounded or dead people. They have been proven to be on a call delay system now, punishing us for being out last summer and demanding accountability and transparency. We cannot be beholden to a police department or a police union that has not one, I don't know, maybe a dozen votes, dozen police officers that live in Minneapolis that don't commute in. So why does our leadership always bend to their ideas? When you do not ask the people who are being unjustly treated what the remedy is, and you're getting your remedy from the very people who are poisoning the soup, you will not get an answer. We need a leader, like Jerrell Perry said, who has experience, these lived experiences. If you were out marching, maybe you said my friend's name, Travis Jordan. It's coming up on 3 years this November 9th, 2018, when the police showed up, rookie officers, and within 3 of quote-unquote de-escalation on a wellness check, killed him. We cannot have politicians who do not know where the bottom is in our police department talking of reform. If you do not know where that lies, if you have not lived it, if you have not gone through those experiences, all they will be doing is wiping crumbs off the table and telling you it's good enough. We cannot have that. We need better leadership. Paul 1, Perry 2.
Thank you, Paul. Mark Globus, would you take the question, sir?
Well, this question, as everyone has said, is the #1 issue facing our city. What do we do with the violence? How do we stop the crime? We're hearing differing opinions on that. I think everybody up on this stage wants a safe city and wants the community to be safe. What's the best way to approach that? I've looked at it very carefully. My take is I'm against question number 2. I think we are better off keeping our police department, fully funding them again so that they can respond to calls, but creating a much higher level of accountability for the police department. We need to have things like a brand new hiring procedure so that people are hired with a different mentality, a different skill set, people who embrace people, people who are more community oriented instead of so black and white. I think that will certainly help our community. Another thing is we need to rework that police contract that is discussed so often. One negotiating strategy I have on that I think we should do is we should increase the pay and the salary for Minneapolis police, make them competitive. They're 16th or 17th best paid. Let's make them #1 paid, but in trade for that, let's get more accountability on the police department so when there's a bad cop or something happens, we can eliminate that police officer and fire them from the department where they shouldn't be. They should be working a different type of job. I truly think we can fix our Minneapolis Police Department. Starting off with a brand new Department of Public Safety is a little risky. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the honor of Bob Carney joining us. The question, Bob, was across the city, historically, underrepresented communities are dealing with ongoing grief and trauma and destabilization. Many are looking to city officials for answers and action in responding to public health and safety, such as COVID-19 and the increase in gun violence. What is your vision of the public safety in Minneapolis? And as mayor, how would you invest resources in bringing about this vision?
Well, our big issue has been public safety and policing. Of course, we've also been hit with COVID, and the disruptions here are so great we simply don't know what's going to happen in terms of people coming back to work in downtown, how people are going to be working going forward. You know, when you look at policing, I've been reading a lot of Upton Sinclair recently, and when you look back to the late 1800s and up into 1900, the brutality of breaking up unions and strikes and the general brutality of policing was pretty incredible. More recently, we've had situations where people have been shot and killed wrongfully. There was evidence in one case that a gun was planted on a site. It was documented by the St. Paul Pioneer Press. And actually, things have been more accountability. When we look from Terrence Franklin up to the present, things have been improving. And you know, we had this horrible, disastrous with George Floyd, and you know, part of what strikes me is no human being can look at that video and not be horrified. But it's so difficult for us to try to maintain any perspective these days. In terms of what we can do going forward, I think that we need to have 311 for non-emergencies. When George Floyd was arrested, they should never have called 911. It's not an emergency situation, allegedly passing a $20 bill. That can be dealt with through 311. We should have more people on ambulance crews and fire department, and the police should play their role of safeguarding these safety issues rather than being called directly.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Nate, Honey Badger, Atkins. Thank you.
Thank you. So as I mentioned in my opening statement, almost everything about my campaign is focused around the issues about law enforcement and police accountability. If you go to honeybadgerformayor.com, that's honeybadger, mayor.com, you can read about the number of positions that I've taken to rein in and make our police accountable. I mentioned at the beginning the importance of requiring police to carry liability insurance as a condition of employment. And I mentioned how other trade people, other workers in our economy all have to carry some form of liability insurance. When you think about it, we even have to carry insurance if we're going to own a car. So I don't see why that shouldn't be a condition of employment for the police. You know, there was a mention of Terrence Franklin and how things have improved. I really disagree with that. The officer who killed Terrence Franklin is still on the force, and if I understand it correctly, he's the head of the SWAT team. And I believe the city has paid out $700,000 in various settlements for people that he's hurt. No officer, no employee anywhere in this world would be able to maintain their employment if because they wouldn't have insurance. No insurance company would continue to employ or cover such a person. Another thing that we need to look at, and I mentioned decriminalizing drug use, that really ties into issues with housing, employment, things like that. Right now, unfortunately, if you're even caught with like a joint, you're slapped with a criminal record, and that prevents you from sometimes being able to get certain kinds of housing, being able to, get a job, maintain a job, keep that job, whatever. There's so many issues that the war on drugs have really exacerbated and made worse. I do want to make Minneapolis a sanctuary city for marijuana use. I'll end it with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for question 1. Now, question 2, Stevens Square and other neighborhood co-sponsoring this forum, Whitter, The Wedge, Elliot Park, and Phillips West, are overwhelmingly made up of renters. Many of these renters are rent burdened, meaning that they spend a high percentage of their income on rent every month. What should Minneapolis do so the renters are not able I'll rephrase that. What should Minneapolis do so that the renters are not able to secure stable housing but build wealth over the long term? Bob? Mr. Carney, would you like to come up again, sir?
Of course, one of the ballot questions is on rent control, and I'm opposed to that. I want to talk about an alternative solution to this. One of the problems with renters is that the property tax charged on commercial property is higher. And there is a senior citizen tax deferral program in Minnesota. The way that it works is that if you're over 65 and you're below an income threshold of $60,000, you pay no more than 3% of your gross income in property taxes. And I believe that this can be implemented for renters also, so that the charge for rent must publicly disclose how much is being charged for property taxes, and if someone is eligible for that, if they're below that income threshold, they should be able to pay not more than 3% of their entire gross income in the form of property taxes. And the rest of it goes on to a lien on the property that is paid off when the property is sold. Now, the fact that that lien is going to have to be paid by the landlord is not a bug, that's a feature. This is a way for renters to gain part of the value for property appreciation. And beyond that, we should think that there can be incentives for renters so that they can be held accountable to make sure that they're taking care of the property to continue to participate in this program. We should make it in the interest of renters to take good care of rental property so that it appreciates in value, and the renters should gain by having this cap on how much they're paying on property taxes, so that when that property is sold, then that's paid off with the appreciation.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Mark Globus, would you take that question, sir?
Thank you. I'm actually one of the few people in the race that's actually created and developed housing. That's my background. That's where my expertise is. And I think we have to be careful about how we approach creating new housing and creating the market mechanisms to get more housing built here in the city. And I think one of the biggest problems is that the city planning staff that oversees planning new projects and developers are not working on the same page. They're working at cross purposes. We really need to team up. And I want to be in that room when those meetings are happening to facilitate this, to make sure The goal is to create affordable housing. What do we have to do together to work together to create it and make it affordable for the city? One program that I like quite a bit is for renters who have issue with problem credit. They go and try to rent an apartment. The landlord says, you know what, you have a nick on your credit, I can't accept you. I think the city needs to be more active in stepping in and guaranteeing the credit for those renters. That will really help. That will help fill up vacant apartment units in Minneapolis. We can also give property tax rebates to owners of small apartment buildings. They pay less taxes. They in turn charge less rents to the renters, making it affordable. I think if we work together and we use the mechanisms of the marketplace, we can solve the problems with affordable rent and affordable housing in Minneapolis. I guarantee that will be my focus as mayor.
Thank you, Mark. Nate, please take that question, sir.
Thank you. So, like Mark, I'm also in a kind of a unique situation here. I actually work for a locally owned home builder. We build homes over in the Northwest Metro, and I do get to see the kind of differences in the homes that we are building there as opposed to the homes being built here in Minneapolis. I can guarantee you, if we were to build one of our homes, which we currently charge anywhere from like the low to mid 300s up in the Northwest Metro, if we were to build one of those homes in Minneapolis, it would have to be priced twice as much just to remain profitable. There are a lot of zoning and zoning regulations and things like that in the city of Minneapolis that does make it very, very difficult to build affordable housing here. One thing that I've kind of become a fan of is the idea of allowing people, lifting zoning restrictions on people who have enough area on their lot, in their yards, to be able to build tiny homes and rent them to people in the community or family members or friends, people who are in need of housing, that would help build some wealth and value for that property while at the same time meeting the need for people who need some form of affordable housing. I think we should also look at eliminating or suspending property taxes for first-time home buyers. As a libertarian, we're always fans of cutting taxes, so yeah, that's something I would totally support. But I think we also need to start having a discussion of how we got here and understanding the roots of the kind of problems in terms of affordable housing. Sadly, there's forces that are kind of beyond our control as a city that play a very, very important role in creating housing that's unaffordable, and it has a lot to do with our monetary system. I wish I had more time to go on into that, but I do think that we as a community and a city need to have an open conversation about how we got here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerrell Perry, please, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Housing. I know a lot of people are concerned about their housing right now, but we have a lot of people, again, that are laying on the streets of our sidewalks. We have to have a Housing First initiative with wraparound services to get our brothers and sisters up and onto their feet and off of the streets with living wage jobs for everyone. We can build housing, not affordable housing. Affordable housing is the city handing over taxpayer dollars to private developers to put in their pocket and do what they want to do with it. It has to be affordable public housing, to where our money comes back into our system repeatedly, benefiting Minneapolitans, not private developers, period. We also have to have, like Sky Without Limits Cooperative over South, the opportunity to own those units. Renters rent their whole lives, just like I have, like I'm doing right now, and then when we're gone, our babies have nothing. But when you own that unit or even own a home, we have to create grants with pathways to home ownership so that we can leave that legacy, build that generational wealth. We can talk about these broad ideals all we want to, but until we actually start putting our hands to the plow to getting them done, it's going to remain a conversation. We can do this. Public housing, 30% of a person's income, no more. What's affordable to you may not be affordable to me. What's affordable to me may not be affordable to you. If it's 30% of your individualized income, everyone can afford a decent place to call home in the city of Minneapolis. We all deserve that. Housing is a human right. It should be considered a privilege. It's a human right. We all should have housing and access to quality, affordable housing. Home ownership, again, we have to have people that have investments in our city, not these hedge funds, but real life people. Doubling the tax rate right now, today, and cutting it in half for owner-occupied units so that real Minneapolitans, again, can have city pride and take care of our communities and each other.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Kate, would you please take that question, please?
Thank you. My approach to housing has two main parts of it. One, we are in a housing crisis, and way too many cannot afford a place to live, are paying way too much and not building wealth. And additionally, way too many of our neighbors are unhoused. Second, housing is the foundation of safety and stability for individuals and families and whole neighborhoods. It's a right, yes, but it is even more the foundation of safety. So I do support rent stabilization. We'll want to quickly go through what I think is important in the design of that. One, we want to center renters as a majority renter city. We want to make sure we're meeting the needs of small landlords, which is an important path to wealth building of people bought into our community. Three, we want to make sure we're not stopping the building of more housing and making the housing crisis worse. And four, I'm not real concerned about the equity capital or the national organizations that just see housing in our city as a way to make money and not a way to create safety and stability for families and neighborhoods. Now, in terms of wealth building, I think this is really important for us to actively undo the harm of redlining and underinvestment in the Black community, Indigenous community, and other communities of color. And so we need pathways into homeownership with counseling, with grants for financial incentives, with looking at not just single-family homes, but duplex, triplex, multi-unit homes to both have that housing stability and the wealth building for families. I'm interested in tenant opportunity to purchase as a way for people and groups to move into more community home and building ownership models. And we need to be looking beyond just the single-family home or the duplex as an ownership model to more community ownership, both creating that stability for individuals and families, but even more a community that is invested quite literally in each other in building their safety and wealth together.
Thank you. AJ, would you please answer that question?
So I'm the son of war refugees and an immigrant to this country, and public housing was really the safety net for us. So I definitely want to co-sign exactly the emphasis that Perry made. There really isn't, and I have to add a story to this. I just came from canvassing in neighborhoods, and there was a gentleman that told me when we were pitching the rent control amendment, and he said, affordable housing, there's no such thing. And that's kind of actually true, right? You know, and Mark, I do kind of want to disagree with you a little bit to say let the market dictate, because housing is a fundamental human right. I mean, it is just unbelievable that we have homelessness in tent cities here in the city of Minneapolis, with many of those people being indigenous. Isn't that a shame and a reflection on really what our society is? So when it comes to this amendment, I want to just take a time to really educate the people that rent control is not rent control. It's exactly what Kate said. It's rent stabilization. The iron law of wages dictates this influx in the economy. So when the economy goes up, ladies and gentlemen, people move into the city looking for those jobs. But those jobs are not promised tomorrow. So when the economy goes down, what's going to happen? Those people that are now in the city are not going to be getting good paying jobs. But guess what happens to the rent? It keeps going up, and it keeps going up. And it keeps going up, right? So rent stabilization has to be a yes in this city this year. And I would commend everybody to do that. When it comes to, I would say, home ownership, listen, I'm a firm believer that if we really want to give an equilibrium to communities of color, education in their youth is the emphasis, right? I want to make sure communities of color's youth, their next generation, are having the critical faculties to understand the market. And yes, have the investments and access to capital to make those purchases. And that's exactly what I plan on doing. So I am a big advocate that we need to have real progressives, leading progressives ideas, and rent control or rent stabilization is that, and I hope everybody votes yes on question 3.
Thank you. Sheila, please, go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much for this question. I have been a renter my entire adult life. I've rented in all different parts of Minneapolis and fully support the question 3 rent control, rent stabilization amendment. I think that this would open up so much for folks who are struggling right now, who are afraid that they can't make the rent. And as mayor, I would support a 3% cap on rental increases tied to the consumer price index, right? To really keep it in line with the most that people's wages are going up on average, right? So, but that's not enough, right, to just institute stabilization of the rent. We need to make sure that renters know their rights. I don't know if you all who are renters, when you rented your first apartment, someone told you, oh, here are all of your rights, here's what your landlord can and cannot do. Certainly that was not my experience. I believed whatever my landlord told me, and I've had some good bad landlords and some not so good landlords. So that's why I want to fully fund a tenant protection board in the city that is made up of renters to help increase education in the city and enforcement of our tenant protections across the city. I also support tenant opportunity to purchase, which is what the program, if your house is up for sale by the landlord, the folks living there get the first opportunity to buy the home. Because stable communities where people know one another, that's safe communities, right? So tenant opportunity to purchase, rent stabilization, that's all part of building more safety in Minneapolis so we can continue to have those conversations with those neighbors who we've seen at community events, out in the streets, whatever it is, being able to stay around one another and being able to afford what is a human right. Thank you.
Thank you. Clint Conner, can you take the question, sir?
Thank you very much. Yes, so I was a renter until age 39, renter with 1, 2, and 3 children, so I do know renter issues, but I was frankly privileged, and I know even with my background, renting is difficult. We have 80% of black Minneapolitans right now are renters. Only 45% of white Minneapolitans are renters. We need to change that. We need to create home ownership in the BIPOC community and make that a very, very big objective of ours. Because when you are an owner, you are committed, you are invested, and you are wanting to see the city improve. And not to say that renters don't, but it adds a little extra incentive there. So what I want to see is city guaranteeing public-private, with support from public-private partnerships, guaranteeing home ownership for BIPOC community in particular and individuals who are trying to work into home ownership for the first time. I do agree with rent to own as an objective that we should apply across the board. I do agree with first right of refusal for renters. I've also done probably the most work here on behalf of low-income tenants and homeowners in Minneapolis. My work has been recognized by the Minnesota Supreme Court, City of Minneapolis. I was a volunteer lawyer of the year for the Volunteer Lawyers Network in 2019, and I've helped convince the Supreme Court of Minnesota to recognize a right of defense of retaliation for tenants who have been kicked out by their landlord on a pretense when really it's all about the tenant complaining about habitability issues. And no one's talking about habitability issues. I want to beef up our inspection program and make that much more proactive. We also have to hold our developers' feet to the fire on affordable housing. Right now we're paying them a lot of money and allowing them to go back on promises, and that can't happen. Look at all this beautiful buildings we're seeing. Who affords that stuff? We've got to get to the point where we're committing them with a promise they can't go back on. We also have to look at a supplemental voucher system for Section 8. Section 8 is a very valuable opportunity for many people who can't otherwise afford to pay rent, where they can live anywhere in the city. We have to do that supplemental work with the city of the Hennepin County to do that, and I'm also interested in exploring rent stabilization stratified in certain parts of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitter.
I don't have all the answers. I'm a regular blue-collar guy. But I'll tell you this. Having tent cities in our city parks and calling that housing for the homeless is not an answer. I've been worried about taking my daughter to the parks ever since Frey and the DFL started with that. The city needs more affordable housing. That's a fact. I don't think rent control is the way to get there. I plan on voting no to the rent control question, and here's why. I'm for the free market. I would like to see developers coming in here and building more homes and more affordable units. And I think if the rent control passes, a lot of these landlords will end up selling their apartment buildings off to big corporations, who will then turn them into condos. That is what's going to happen. You're going to crush the free market with rent control. It doesn't work. Don't vote for it. Do you want the city council in charge of something else? Okay? Take a look at Lake Street. Do you want them in charge of rent control too? No. Let the free market decide that. I am for the 2040 plan. I think it's going to work out here in the city. But I think we really need to clamp down on all the variances that they're letting the builders get away with, like not creating parking on the city streets. We've all been to Uptown. There's no parking on the streets. If you let the developers keep building these 3- and 4-story buildings in your neighborhoods with no parking, every street is going to look like Uptown in Minneapolis. And if Frey ends up winning again somehow, we're not going to have a housing problem here in the city because there's going to be lots of empty houses because the crime rate is going to go through the roof. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
So we actually paid the U of M to do a study on rent stabilization, and it was all positive. I was actually one of the only candidates besides this guy here who was actually at the renter-led rent control initiative that Frey vetoed, saying that we're not even smart enough to vote on something that we should vote on. We have only 50% of our homes in Minneapolis owned, period. That's a problem. We obviously can't build city pride without that sort of ownership. Within that 50% owned, 75% of white and 25% of black folks. And that obviously is because of the wealth gaps that we need to address. As a government, when we know our disparities and yet we keep throwing nickels at it, we're never going to get anywhere. Frey talked about $28 million of investment in affordable homes. For that same $28 million, I could have taken the 400 vacant lots or lots with homes in it in Minneapolis that the city of Minneapolis actually owns, built or rebuilt those homes and given them away. 400 properties that would have been building generational wealth to people. Now, can we just do that? Well, yeah, we can. We gave away $28 million to an outside investor that's paying taxes probably in another state. So when we invest in ourselves, we see the return immediately, okay? We have got to have the initial, the first step programs. There is a tremendous amount of distrust within our BIPOC communities with banking. We need first level introductions, close personal meetings, micro savings loans led by neighborhood associations, things of that nature to really introduce and educate on a first level basis so we can really start to begin building ecological or an economical, trust within that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Okay. Moving on to question 3. One of the priorities of the adopted Minneapolis 2040 plan calls to establish equitable distribution of food, sources, and food markets to provide all Minneapolis residents with reliable access to healthy, affordable, safe, and culturally appropriate food. How does equitable food access fit into your policy platforms as mayoral candidates, particularly in low-income neighborhoods? AJ, would you please take that question?
That question. So just briefly, I just want to say the 24 comp plan has great things about it. I think the trajectory for density is clear. But I just do want to make sure it's in the ether and the correlation is there. 2040 also coincides 5 years before the country of the United States is going to predominantly be non-white majority. And I just want to also let people know that 27 out of the current states are zero birth rate for white people. The only exception to that city is, or that state is Minneapolis and Minnesota, because we're an enclave, because a lot of people keep moving here, and that's what's going to be leading. So, and that's very, very important when we're talking about food. As you all know, and as someone who's raised in the north side, usually raised in, places that do not have Whole Foods or organic places. And when it comes to those type of investments, it's really on the city's leadership in really incentivizing and negotiating with big major corporations that provide good food, right? Getting into healthy partnerships and demanding and regulating, right, that they actually provide better access. The north side shouldn't have liquor stores on every single block, right? Or chicken and pizza spots, right? We deserve more than that. And that really comes from having a leader that's going to make those decisions when it comes to executive authority. And as far as departmental roles are concerned, and I want to make sure everybody actually votes yes on question 1, 2. That's going to be my approach, because I understand, not just because I want to do good because I studied it, I think as Perry said, but also I know people, and people do not need that. I lived in those circumstances, and that's really the thing we need to understand. But that 2040 comp plan, I want people to take a grain of salt with that, because it is going to have impacts on the diversity of this city if the trends to continue to go the way it is. And as far as we're talking about coming together, we need to have that in our mindsets. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila, could you please take that question?
Thank you. Yes, so I have been involved in neighborhoods for a long time. I'm so happy that this is an event hosted by neighborhood associations. I was the board president of the Lyndale Neighborhood Association. And there's another neighborhood that's been inspiring me. It's the East Phillips neighborhood. So the East Phillips neighborhood has been fighting for this project called the East Phillips Indoor Urban Farm. Have you all heard about it? Yes. Yeah, all right. Some EPNI fans in the house. So what that would allow is a space to grow local food for young people, to be able to learn about agriculture, to be able to learn about solar energy. It would also incorporate affordable housing, all taking an industrialized site and turning it into a space for free local food and small businesses to sell their wares. Sorry, I get a little caught up under the mask. So the urban farm is an example of exactly what we need in Minneapolis right now, and I am deeply disappointed that our current council and mayor are not supporting the neighborhood in that project, because we need equitable food access in areas that have been food deserts, right, or food oases, like the East Phillips neighborhood. And as mayor, I will support those local neighborhood solutions to grow more food, to provide free food, and to help young people learn how to grow their own food as well. And then we can provide incentives for local markets, like the market on the corner of Cedar and 26th, to carry local food, right? To be able to make it easy to walk to the corner store, buy some healthy food, and also know your neighbor grew it, right? So we can fund these local solutions, we can fund these neighborhood solutions, and you can check out more on my website, SheilaForThePeople.com. There's a lot more about food access. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Kate, could you please take the question?
Food is essential to our security, our stability, our health, our wellness. It's essential to who we are as people. It's part of our culture. It's part of our celebrations. It's the way we come together. And I think that is the understanding of food and the approach I will take to leading on access to, growing of, preparing of, and consuming of healthy food in our city. And right now, the city of Minneapolis is moving through a process with its homegrown Food Council. It's Homegrown Minneapolis program. We are actually in the later stages of a new food plan for the city. So I just want to make sure people who are interested in this check that out on the city website and get involved if you are not aware of it yet. So I think we need to increase where we're growing food with community gardens, increasing knowledge of how to have people make that grow and prepare food in their own yards and communities. We need to be connecting local growers with institutions and ways to sell this food. And one of the statistics that I think is really amazing about our city, but even the broader region within which we grow food, is that over half of growers and sellers at Twin Cities farmers markets are Hmong. So we have a really important way to connect different cultural groups in our city through our food markets, not just farmers markets, but into institutions. We need to be taking a neighborhood approach and looking at some places where we really need to be investing. Talking with students at the university, they're hungry for having food options and healthy, affordable food with a grocery store on and near campus, making sure the north side doesn't have the kinds of food deserts it currently has, investing in and partnering with the really amazing leadership with the East Phillips neighborhood and the urban farm. There's local examples already of where we see needs, where people are already leading and having a mayor, being a mayor. I will be a mayor who will partner in that food work to build safer, healthier communities with food as not just nutrition, but as a way to connect and celebrate.
Thank you. Nate, please, could you take the question, sir?
All right, so when I think about how we're going to get more food to more people in a much more affordable way, I think that we need to basically open up and allow for greater competition in terms of like food services and food providers. I think anytime that you open up competition in any sector of the economy, you do see competitors work to drive down prices to meet needs. I mentioned before the idea of allowing property owners to build tiny homes and build structures on their own property that they can, sell or rent to people. I think that we do need to start opening up and allowing people to grow their own, not just their own food, but food that they can in turn sell and provide to people within their neighborhoods. It's funny, when I was coming back from a daily jog recently, I was jogging down the street in my neighborhood, and there was a couple that was having this really unique bike delivered, and it's a bike with a massive cooler on the front, and they were planning to grow their own vegetables in their yard and then bring it around and sell and provide it to people within the neighborhood and the community. It's that sort of kind of entrepreneurship that we need to encourage and allow people to build upon. And I think when we do that, we will see, greater diversity of food, greater opportunities for people to eat. We'll see much healthier options. It's just really about allowing the marketplace to open up and do what it does best. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, please take the question, sir.
As many of us were outside last year protecting our neighborhoods from outside forces who are trying to come in and make our movement look bad, we were protecting the North Side Market on the nightly basis because people were over there trying to bomb what little food the North Siders have. We have one Cub and one other market. Besides that, we have the small food markets. What I foresee in our small communities is not enticing Cub, not enticing any large groups, but rather community building and community funding. When $15 million is spent on barricading in our government plaza when it could have been spent buying the land around George Floyd Square, rebuilding it for people, having a place to mourn, grow food, peace gardens, and rebuilding all of those, each side of that street, and giving those businesses, all brand new businesses with awnings on the street and a place to commune. When I was in New York, the most expensive land in the world, they've taken blocks and committed it to the 3,000 or so lives that got our nation to stand up and change, and we couldn't offer two sides of a block for a revolution that went worldwide. We have got to stand up for ourselves and understand that when we invest in ourselves, in our community, when we have Joe selling fruit and Rhonda selling fish and the guy down butchering, we will have a better community. We will have an understanding of who's in our community. We'll be walking the blocks. I also have a garden initiative. I call it 5 by 5. We should have a free seed bank in Minneapolis with an abundance of seeds. It's something to do preparation-wise anyway. And that should be free to all residents. Get your free seeds. Offer up 5 by 5 place on your yard. We'll come and till it. And get your neighbors together and grow all the ingredients for sauce. Do something together where you're helping each other out and building those relationships.
Thank you, sir. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, food is really the ultimate need, and it is a human right, and we need to work on that together so everybody in the city has enough to eat. I come from a business background, and I think about things like logistics. Let's set up a program to get food that's spoiling in regular grocery stores, get that into the communities first so that people can consume that before it goes bad. Also, we need more of a hand-in-hand program with the restaurants in our community to make sure that at the end of the night, none of that food is going to waste, that's going to food shelves and to neighborhoods so that people can take advantage of that. We want to incentivize businesses to be thinking about that and making sure that everybody in our community is well fed. Things like additional funding for community gardens is key. People need to be able to, in our city, be able to grow their own food. That's so important to have healthy food. Let's support that. We need to have more farmers markets in our city. Less regulation about where they can be set up and conducted. Let's just smooth things out so that there can be farmers markets so that people can bring in food right to the neighborhoods that can be affordable. Again, I think working along hand in hand with the business community and the people who really understand food distribution, that's the best way to give food to everybody who needs it. That's what we need to take a close look at. Minneapolis is a great city. We can't have anybody going hungry in our community.
Thank you.
I'm not an expert on food. I do know that if you want good quality organic food, you go over to Whole Foods, right? And then you go in there and it's your whole paycheck for that food. Am I right or wrong? Yeah. If I'm looking for that type of stuff, I'll go over to Cub or Target and head over to the produce section, and most of the time it's pretty affordable. If our market demands more organic food, I do believe that companies will come in and flood the market with that type of food if there's a demand for it. So that's what I would encourage. Other than that, if you want to go out and do some gardening and start growing food in your backyard, I'm all for that too. I don't have time for that myself, but I encourage everyone that has a backyard that's in the gardening and you'd like to go out and grow your own food, please go out and do so. If the city can help with a seed bank, then I would be for that option too. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerrell, please go ahead.
Thank you. Equitable access to food is essential. And when students don't have enough food to eat or the right food to eat, they can't be as successful in school as they should be. So Paul has been talking a long time about making all the meals in school free, and I believe that's an excellent idea, making sure that all the children in the city have access to that. Equitable access to food is a major, major concern, and we've acknowledged that. We've even labeled Minneapolis as a food desert, right? So bringing in those resources, bringing in partnerships. Leslie Davis and the Earth Protectors have been talking about making a hydroponic farm in North Minneapolis for a long time, teaching the kids how to grow their food year-round, teaching them those lessons, those lifelong lessons that nobody can ever take away from them. Healthy investments that can help our children live and be strong in what they're doing. The current leadership rejected that plan, just like they rejected the plan for the East Phillips urban farm. They're talking about all the pollution, all the toxicity that has been forced on the residents, and the community wants something different. Nobody knows what's better for a community than the community itself. So when the community takes the time, the diligence to come together and formulate a plan, it's on the city leadership to support that plan. That's what the mayor is, the voice of the people. Not to represent the Republican Party, not to represent the Democratic Party, not to represent any business interests, but to genuinely represent and be the voice of the people. And that's what I plan to be. There's so many things that we can do when we're talking about funding for community-owned co-ops. We keep talking about growing our own food and then exchanging it. Community-owned co-ops where we don't have big businesses coming in, taking all the money out of the city like we do in so many other areas. Communities have been asking for that, and again, we have to do what communities want. That's the only way to bring people together and everybody have a common goal to move our city forward.
Thank you. Bob, please.
One of the things that really strikes me is how individualistic we tend to be as a society, and how much we are in silos. You know, churches and mosques and synagogues are meeting places for people. And one of the biggest reasons that people get together to meet is to eat. And so I think that community and food are very related. We can break down a lot of the isolation that we see in our society by simply having people gather together in their local communities, churches, mosques, synagogues, and eating there on a regular basis. Just as a matter of economics, it's more efficient to produce and cook and provide good, nutritious food that way. And you can address the equity issue simply by either not charging at all or charging on a voluntary basis. But I think that we shouldn't think of food as this external thing. It's a part of how we live, and it's a part of how we form communities. And so I think that we really should look at the relationship between how we live, either in individual families or in communities. And we really ought to think about why we encourage this hyper-individualism and atomistic living where we're all off in our own separate boxes. So I think there's a big relationship between how people live and how they eat, and whether they do it as a part of a community or whether they do it kind of atomistically and eating out of the box.
Thank you. All right. Clint, could you please take the question, sir?
Sure, thank you, and thank you again for being out here tonight. And I consider giving thanks to the people in yellow vests that are around here. I've been to a few gatherings in this neighborhood, and they're out always helping to organize and make sure things go right. So equitable access to food is, of course, a huge issue. And one of my 3 pillars for my platform is a small business boom. We need a small business boom from the north side, down here, Lake Street corridor. We can do this through emergency relief funding that we're sitting on that's been unallocated. We can do this through calling on the big businesses around Minneapolis to help pony up to create low-interest loans that will support and maintain small businesses in our communities. If I'm envisioning a situation like Manhattan where you have city bodegas on every corner owned by someone in the community, and that bodega sells locally grown food. We can also subsidize their purchase of locally grown food, like the type that make their wares available at the farmers markets. We can do that for our community here. I'm also very much in favor of making meals in school free for every child that needs it. And I know that we're not quite meeting that threshold, and we should do more for that. And I also think we should work with our local growers to provide the food that's served at these schools instead of the pizza and whatever that are served, sometimes here. We need to make it more healthy. So those are my general ideas. And I would also say, going back to the 2040 plan, which is what kicked this off, I have one big issue with the 2040 plan, and that is, it provides for increased density, but we missed a golden opportunity. We missed a golden opportunity to bake in affordable housing in our city, and we need to hold our leaders accountable for that. And frankly, I will help get that done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are just on time for this forum. I am proud and honored that we have candidates, questions, that we can start and end on time. That's important to set the pace in days to come. Yes, sir. I want to thank everyone that showed up. I want to thank everyone that showed up to listen to our candidates. This is an opportunity that we must take advantage of, and as a community, which we all are, part of this community, the neighborhood organizations, I want to thank you for joining in and helping kick this off to a great success. If there's questions that you still want to ask, the tables in back of the tent here, behind me are where the candidates are going to be, and in the tables across the back of the tent, we have community organization information for you if you want that. So feel free to stick around and ask questions. As we do that, the church staff is going to come and start taking stuff down. So don't feel like you're being rushed out of here. And if you want to pitch in and help, ask. Don't just volunteer to help. They know where everything goes. They're very good at what they do. And we really appreciate the church staff for allowing us to be here tonight. Thank you.